The next Zemer I want to consider is Tzama Nafshi of the Ibn Ezra. But before I begin to look at that, I think I should talk about the different styles of liturgical poems. Zmiros, Piyutim, Kinos, and so on. The oldest of these, of this entire genre that we have, are from Rabbi Eliezer Kalir. That the Rosh says he's a Tana, some people say it's a period of the Gaonim, certainly from the later period of the Gaonim, because the earliest of the Rishonim have his poems. And it is a style that was primarily copied by the Ashkenazi Rishonim. Most Ashkenazi Kinot, Piyutim, Slichos, etc., Zmiros are written in this style. And it's a style where there are constant references to Midrashim, Agados, various halachos, Tanakh, and so on. For instance, in the Kina Az Bahaloch Yirmiyahu, which is the fourth parak of Eicha, Chazal tell us, was Yirmiyahu's lament over Yeshayahu. So when the Kalir is creating a piyut for this, he has each stanza starts with the same word as the corresponding pasuk in the fourth parak. So, for instance, the first stanza starts with the same word as the first pasuk, the second stanza, the second pasuk, etc. Throughout the entire fourth parak, he has that many stanzas. But within each stanza, there are many, many references to all sorts of midrashim and what hints to various psukim that would not necessarily be obvious to one. It takes a huge amount of time to come to understand what these mean, unless someone is an incredible expert in all of the midrashic, agadic, Tanakh, Mefarshi Tanakh, etc. sources. One would find it extremely difficult to sight read them and have an idea of what's going on in them. That is the earliest of the liturgical poems. Very early on, you have others that there are references to psukim, but they're not nearly obscure. They're relatively accessible, and simply by reading it, you are drawn into the power of these things. The Ibn Gavral, Yehuda Levi, the Ibn Ezra, the Sephardic school is primarily dominated by this type of poem, by this type of shira. In general, the Ibn Ezra was not happy with the Ashkenazi piyutim. He felt that they were very difficult to understand, that they were obtuse, that people misunderstood them, that they didn't understand them at all. Just in general, he did not like this method. Having said that, Tzama Nafshi of the Ibn Ezra, to a certain extent, is in this style, meaning, I should better say it's a cross. You can read it and understand it and be drawn by the beauty of the poetry. However, if you happen to understand his references, it's a much deeper piece as well, which is not the common nature of the Ibn Ezra's poetry. And when we get to the Zmiros for Shabbos day, we'll really see this in a great contrast. Even in the keynotes that we say, Sion Haloti Shalil by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, if you compare that to the keynotes of the Kalir or most of the Ashkenazim that we have so many of, are very dense and difficult to get to, whereas if you recite Tzion Haloti Shali as a poem, the poetry speaks to you. It's not a referential poem other than referring to the emotions, the drawing of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi to Eretz Yisrael. And he's conveying it to us. And what we lost was our closeness to Eretz Yisrael, and through our closeness to Eretz Yisrael, a closeness to God. And is Eretz Yisrael concerned about us, the people that have remained loyal to Eretz Yisrael? Has Eretz Yisrael remained loyal to us? And so on and so on. These themes show through just in a strong emotional way, without necessarily references to Agarot and Shas or Midrashim or various Pesukim that talk about these same things. He doesn't need that. It's just what he is emotionally feeling is what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is putting forward in that. So too most of the Ibn Ezra's poetry, it has the same quality to it, meaning you don't have to know anything else to be drawn in to the strength of what he's saying. So this is a contrast in liturgical poems. There are, of the Zmiros that most people regularly say, even the ones of Ashkenazi origin in general follow more in the Sephardic pattern than in the typical Ashkenazi pattern. And I think it's fairly obvious that one of the reasons why this is true is that when people sing every Shabbos, and they sing with their children and so on, they don't want to be singing something that's too dense for them to understand. So the ones that became popular are the ones that don't require any reference. They speak in and of themselves. Most, not all. There are some Zmiros that are very dense. Certainly the Kabbalistic ones of the Arizal and so on are like that. But most of the ones we have are accessible as they are, even though they may have certain amounts of hints, and many of these hints in them are things that people with an education that was certainly opened to the vast majority of Jews in the time of Rishonim and the early Achronim would have been something that's very obvious to most people. That's not necessarily true later, but there's still that we feel an opening to it. The Tzama Nafshi, as I said, has both of these. It certainly has this, you can just read the words and say the words and they speak very powerfully for you. And at the same time, there is a lot of depth in it. And we'll try and look at both aspects of it. One other thing, Tzama Nafshi comes out of the Sephardic school, and it was true in the times of the early Rishonim in Sfarad that the Chacham was expected to not give a drasha every Shabbos, but write poems that would be inserted into the repetition of the Amida, or perhaps in Pesukei Zimra or other places, that would be that lesson. And they would write new ones for every year. Tzama Nafshi, there is a debate as to what it was written for. It was either written for an introduction. It was certainly written as an introduction to Nishmas Kol Chai. Was it written as the introduction to Nishmas Kol Chai that was said Simchas Torah morning, or was it written as an introduction to Nishmas Kol Chai in the Seder. Moriv Rabbi Zatzal, Rav Chaim Drukman, put it in his Haggadah. He felt that it was written as an introduction to Nishmas in the Seder, and he was noheg. He became accustomed after he published his Haggadah that we would sing in the Tzama Nafshi before Nishmas Kol Chai during the Seder. This is the introduction, and next week, Be'ezus Hashem, we will look at the words of Nishmas and see how they speak to us. Everyone should have a wonderful day.